So, hello everybody, my name is Anthony Kyriakidis. I work in the Scottish Renewables team at the Energy Saving Trust. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar, which is going to be focusing on home renewables support in Scotland. I'm joined by my colleagues Aurélie Tartaud and Joe Wilson, who work in the Renewables team with me here. I'm also delighted to have Boden Nastiuk, who's a specialist renewables advisor from Home Energy Scotland. He works in the northeast. So this webinar is really just part of a series of webinars we're delivering. The work's funded by the Scottish Government, and it's part of their support for home renewables and energy efficiency. And the idea really is to help Scottish householders save money on their energy bills, improve their homes, reduce carbon emissions, meet climate change targets, and build a lower carbon economy. Some general points about the webinar. You can hear us, but we can't hear you, and that's perfectly normal for webinars, so don't be alarmed. We're also recording the webinar, so others can watch it afterwards, and also so we can send you a copy. We expect it will last about 45 minutes, and if we get time towards the end, we'll try and answer any questions you've sent through. If you want to send a question, you'll see you've got some webinar, there's like a control panel on the webinar software. That should be on the right of your screen. And there's a section in there, the chat section, where you can send through questions for us. Sorry, the questions section where you can send through questions for us. Our program for today is as follows. We're going to be covering Home Energy Scotland, what that is and what it does. Then we'll focus a little bit more on the specialist renewables advice side of the Home Energy Scotland service. We're going to take you through the Green Homes Network, which is basically real-life examples of people who've put home renewables in. Then we'll move on to funding support, so where you can get financial help to put renewables in. And then we'll quickly take you through some online resources that you could use to find out more about renewables. And then finally, we're going to have Boden talking about some case studies, some examples of just real life householders that he's supported up in the northeast of Scotland. Then, as I mentioned, we'll have, if we've got time, some questions and answers before we finish off. So, moving on to renewable support for householders. You'll see here, these are the main areas we're going to cover. And first, we're going to be talking about Home Energy Scotland. So, Home Energy Scotland, funded by the Scottish Government, and it's a one-stop shop, basically. It's your independent, impartial place to go to find out about saving energy in the home. There's a network of 5 advice centres, and those are managed by the Energy Saving Trust. And the idea behind Home Energy Scotland is really to give people free, clear, independent and impartial advice that's relevant to their home in their local area. And it covers a number of different topics. So we talk about energy efficiency in the home, as well as behavioural advice, the ways you can adapt your behaviours to save energy. We cover renewables, as well as your transport, your personal transport. And we also cover things like water, as well as occasionally resources and waste. And we always help people understand what they can do in their home and the financial support that's there, as well as potentially we can also refer people for benefits checks, particularly if they're fuel poor or vulnerable. Last financial year, we helped over 90,000 householders in Scotland. And moving on to the specialist renewables advice side of things, I'll pass you over to my colleague, Aurélie.
So, through Home Energy Scotland advice centres, you can also benefit from the specialist advice on renewables. So, one of our 20 specially trained advisors can give you high quality, impartial and in-depth and bespoke advice on renewables, either in your home or remotely over the phone. And this service includes a visit to your home and a tailored report, but also ongoing support after that, wherever you are in your journey. And to give you an idea of scale, we help more than 3,000 customers each year through this service. Also, this service is available for anyone in Scotland, wherever you are, from Shetlands to Dumfries and Galways, and from Western Isles to Fife. So this in-depth service is a holistic approach, and we'll look at the energy performance of your property first to make it more energy efficient so that it uses less energy in the first instance. And so the specialist advisor will assess the suitability of your home renewables for your home and your household, and they will provide you with recommendations and associated estimated fuel bill savings and carbon emission savings. They will explain the different funding supports that you could be eligible for and help you tie them all together. They will highlight local households through the Green Homes Network, like Anthony mentioned earlier, and we'll explain that a bit later. And they'll explain the different standards for installers and products. So especially for home renewables, the microgeneration certification scheme. So this is a scheme setting standards for home renewable technologies, as well as installation standards for installers. And it provides consumer protection as well through and warranties. So you can find more information on the MCS website about this. So the advisor will also give you some guidance on the different planning permissions or building warrants that you might need, and if you need to contact the distribution network operator if you're looking into installing electricity generating technologies. And they'll also cover things you need to consider when you're speaking with installers. So to give you some idea of the the tailored report that you will receive after the service. So this is some screenshot of what it might look like. So the report will cover the current state of your property in terms of energy performance. And also it will give you different scenarios of improvements that you can make in your property, depending on what was been discussed during the visit in your home. And this is some feedback from customers that we've helped in the past, and they've told us that not only if they're saving energy and saving money on their fuel bills, they also installing renewables help them increase the comfort they're feeling in their home and reduce stress related to paying their bills or heating, feeling good in their home, really. So this is how we can help you in your journey with renewables. So you can read some really good feedback on this slide about how professional our advisors are and how holistic the approach is, etc.
So moving on to the Green Homes Network, basically the idea with this is to not only hear from Home Energy Scotland and from Energy Saving Trust about what you can do, but really is a way of you finding out what other regular homeowners have done in their own home. And we contacted people we knew who had installed renewables and improved their homes with energy efficiency improvements, and asked them if they wanted to join this network. And by joining, they would have a case study about what they've done, but also they would be willing to speak to other homeowners either on the phone or invite other locals round to come and actually have a look at what they've done. We've got over 1,000 homes now in Scotland that have joined this network. The vast majority of them have a renewable system in there, and we've got everything from, you know, the really fancy grand designs type homes all the way through to the more common standard homes where somebody may have just put up a PV panel or may have put a renewable heating system in. And we use these people, these network members, also as speakers at some of the Home Energy Scotland events we do. We sometimes have open doors days, meet and greet type things, but also we can organise an individual visit for you. So if you find a case, a home that you're interested in looking at, then we can put you in touch with that homeowner, and you can go and visit them and chat to them in person about what they've done. On the left here, you'll see a screenshot of our online tool. So you find this on our website, on the Energy Saving Trust website, and you can go in and search for particular technologies in particular locations, and then read a case study. An example is on the right there. So this is one of the more, it's a modern home that's been built from scratch, and it's quite a sort of impressive looking building. But as I said, you know, there's other more common homes on there as well. And here's just an example of something that we were doing last year with a selection of homeowners who were just opening their doors on particular days to let people come in and have a look. But as I said, we can organise individual private visits as well. And we use these network members as speakers at events. So if you've got an opportunity to go to an event in your local area from Home Energy Scotland, it's quite possible there'll be a Green Homes Network member there telling you about their own experiences. So have a look online after the webinar and see what you can find on there. Some of the user feedback we get is listed here, so I'll let you have a quick read. And I think you'll find that you know, everybody who goes on one of these visits finds it useful just hearing from somebody who's done it themselves. So now we're going to talk about financial support.
So there's a range of financial support available for home renewable systems. It's important to note that this does change from year to year and is subject to availability, etc. So it's quite good to get Home Energy Scotland involved in the process quite early. But some of the support that's currently available for renewables are listed here. So we've got the Home Energy Scotland loan, which is an interest-free loan of up to £32,500, and that covers energy efficiency and renewables. And there's also the domestic renewable heat incentive and feed-in tariff schemes, and we're going to look at these three in a little bit more detail. There are also other government schemes. These often target fuel poverty, but again, it's important to note that because every scheme has different rules and eligibility criteria, it can be a little bit confusing. So it's important to get advice from Home Energy Scotland, just so that you're aware of everything that's available to you, which is particularly important if you're perhaps considering a sort of higher cost measure like a renewable system, or if you're a vulnerable customer, or if you're in danger of fuel poverty. Advisors can also help to give you advice on how you might be able to combine support, because although these schemes here aren't actually linked, it is possible to combine some of these schemes, in particular the first three, the loan and RHI and FITs. So the Home Energy Scotland loan. This is an interest-free loan and it's funded by the Scottish Government, so it's available to properties in Scotland. It's interest-free, so you won't pay any interest on your repayments. There's just a sort of one-off small administration fee that you'd be informed about when you first applied. This is to make the initial costs more affordable, and it supports home renewables and energy efficiency improvements, which is quite important because if you are considering installing a renewable system, one requirement of this loan is that you must have a minimum level of energy efficiency measures in place, such as insulation, and you can use the same application form to use for your renewable system and insulation at the same time. So it's available to owner-occupiers and certain private sector landlords, and you can get up to £10,000 for a renewable heating system, up to £2,500 for renewable electricity generating system. And if you were to apply for everything that you could apply for, the maximum you'd be able to get for both renewables and energy efficiency is £32,500. One thing to note is that for energy efficiency measures, there is, for a limited period, cashback funding available. That's not available for renewables systems because there are other financial incentive schemes that, that are available for these systems. So how would you apply? In order to apply for the loan, you would need to have a referral from Home Energy Scotland. This is quite an important step in the process because they'll be able to advise you not only on the loan and things like the energy report that you would need in order to support your application. They can also check for other support that you may not be aware of, just to make sure that this is the best option for you. We don't have time to talk about all of the eligibility criteria here, but one thing you would have to do is to use an MCS product and installer. As my colleague Orly mentioned earlier, there's a list of these available, and it just sort of allows for an extra layer of consumer protection and quality. Specialist advice is available for the loan. In-home visits and reports from specialists will cover the loan, and we've helped to support more than 3,000 renewable systems since loan funding for renewables has started. The loan isn't linked to other schemes, so if you're eligible for the loan, it doesn't necessarily mean you're eligible for RHI or FITs, but you can combine it. And one thing to note is that you must have a loan offer before you begin work. So if you started work already, you won't be eligible. So again, involve Home Energy Scotland as soon as possible. So if you were thinking of installing a renewable heating system, you might be interested in the domestic RHI. This is a UK government scheme. They fund the scheme and it's administered by Ofgem eServe. And this would give you payments quarterly over 7 years for renewable heat required for the home. And some of the eligible systems are listed here. Again, like the loan, you would need an MCS certificate. So your product and installer need to be listed as MCS accredited. Your system would also need to be listed as eligible on the RHI product eligibility list. This is also now a requirement of the loan too. But you can get advice on the rules, the application process, and you know, anything else like the other support that you might need to apply for this scheme from home renewable specialists. Another useful tool that we'll look at in a bit later is the domestic RHI calculator. This estimates potential payments that you might be able to receive. And also, it's important to note that recently there was a consultation on reforms to the scheme. But if you look at the link at the bottom of this slide, if you look at the link at the bottom of this slide, that'll give you links to the calculator, the product eligibility list, give you details about the tariffs, and it'll also give you a link to the consultation response. So you'll be able to take a look at that and see if there's anything that might affect you. And finally, if you were looking to install an electricity generating system, you might be interested in the feed-in tariff scheme. This is also funded by the UK government. In this case, instead of an online application, such as with RHI, you would make an application to an energy supplier, and this is overseen by Ofgem eServe too. Payments are made over 20 years for this scheme, and you pay basically for the renewable electricity you generate and the renewable electricity that's exported back to the grid. So solar PV, wind or hydro turbines, and micro combined heat and power can all be used. Again, you'd need an MCS certificate. This is the case for all systems except for hydro. This process is slightly different. So again, your product and installer need to be MCS accredited. But Home Energy Scotland can advise on the rules and application processes. And you can find out more about that on our web page as well. Links at the bottom of the page. And there's also links there to the solar energy calculator and the cashback calculator that you can find useful, and we'll look at them in a wee bit more detail.
Thanks, Jo. So now we're going to look at online resources that are available to you. So we've got on our website lots of information about the different technologies, renewable technologies, so electricity or heat generating technologies, and also on energy storage. So you can visit our website and have a read. So there's also a page where all the supports for renewables are listed, and you'll find lots of different links to all the information you need to know. This is a screenshot of an online an online tool rather, that we host on our website. So it's called the Renewable Selector tool. So this tool is to help you start your thinking about renewables. So it will ask you a set of questions to assess the suitability of your property for different renewable technologies. So it's just to give you a first idea of what you could do, and then we would advise you to call Home Energy Scotland to get into further research and get more in-depth advice on what could really be done to your property. There's also the solar energy calculator. So this calculator, you enter your postcode and select different parameters, and it'll give you an idea of how much savings you could make from installing solar PV on your roof, and also how much payment you could get from the feed-in tariff. So the scheme that Joe just explained before. We've got a similar calculator for wind, hydro, and micro CHP, which give you the similar results. Yeah, so that. And there's also the renewable heat incentive calculator. So this calculator is has been built by the Energy Saving Trust on behalf of the UK government, and it's sitting on the UK government website. Again, it will give you an idea of how much payment you can get from the renewable heat incentive scheme. And on our website, you can also find videos, different videos of the different technologies, and finally some more in-depth information on energy storage, on home energy storage, that we've issued recently. And this is a link where you can start looking for things on a website. So yeah, feel free to use this link, and I'm sure you'll find lots of information to keep you going on your journey. And finally, this is another tool, another search tool that we host on our website. So this tool will help you find a renewable installer in your local area. So you just need to enter your postcode in the search, and you could select any specific technology that you're looking for, and you can see the results either in a map view, like you can see in this image, or in a list view. And so there's lots of information that you can read on this tool. Each installer has their own profile, and you can read information about what they've done with previous customers, and all the certification that they have, any special offer that they have at the moment. We currently have 70% of all certified installers operating in Scotland, and you can find the more comprehensive list on the MCS website. But our tool will give you a bit more information about each installer, and you can also read reviews and ratings from other customers who've used these installers. We've got more than about 2,000 reviews at the moment, so there's lots for you to read. And if you have installed already, you could also leave some feedback about your installer. And there's a link at the bottom of this slide to help you access that tool.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Arlie and Joe. So what we thought would also be useful is for you to hear from our colleague Bowden, who is based up in northeast Scotland, and here's some of his experiences of helping householders as part of his job. So, Bowden, just going to pass over to you now.
Thank you, Anthony. So I'm just going to explain a little bit about what actually goes on in a visit to begin with. So initially, a customer would register their interest and books a visit with a phone call, either through myself or by a Home Energy Scotland advisor. You get a confirmation via email for the time and date of the visit. Then on the day of the visit, I would give you a call as a reminder and give you an expected time of arrival. So initially what we do is carry out an energy audit, looking at the construction of the property. So we would look at all elements, like the floors, walls, glazing, roof types, and the extensions. Also the installation levels, heating system, and lighting. I would then discuss the findings with you and discuss how you could go about improving these aspects. So the reason for this is that the level of energy efficiency of the property can affect the type of renewables suitable, as well as the rates of financial incentives. So in terms of renewable options that we'd be looking at heat or electricity generating technologies. So heat generating technologies could either be biomass, ground source heat pump, air source heat pumps, solar thermal panels. Electricity could be solar photovoltaic panels, or wind turbine, or even micro hydro. I would then explain and discuss the suitability of these options and ensure you understood how they work. And also discuss any of the financial incentives, such as grants or loans. After the visit, I would produce a tailored report for your property, including all the information discussed on the day and recommendations. So this is usually sent out to you by email with links to the various tools on the Energy Saving Trust website. So it's ongoing service through to install, providing support and advice. So really, I like to know what happens with the property and if there's any improvements have been carried out. So we'd also follow up to see if any changes have been made or further advice is necessary. So it's really hoped that with this service and the information will help you in deciding how to progress with installing a renewable system into your home. So I'm just going to discuss a little bit about a few case studies. So there was a lady I visited, one was yesterday, and it was quite an unusual one, as it was an old traditional stone-built property, previously used by a gaming estate. So it was built in 1895, covered about 500 meters squared, and it had 3 properties within it and a large covered courtyard. And the plan was to convert it all into one large family home. So I met with the lady and the architect, and we sat down to discuss the plans for the house. So the current heating was a mix of wood-burning stoves and convector panel heating. And the architect was suggesting converting to a ground source heat pump. But after some discussion and inspecting the property, we came to the conclusion that an automated biomass boiler would be a better option. So the reason it was a better option is that the heat loss through the external walls would be too great, as they were not looking to insulate all of the floors or the external walls. And as a result of that, a heat pump operates on a much lower temperature than that of a standard central heating system, and therefore would result in being too costly to run. So they've now decided, as well as to go ahead with the biomass system and to install solar thermal panels, as it had a large unshaded south-facing roof. So this would mean that they would use little or no fuel to heat their water during the summer months. So with having a visit, it was now changed their plans completely, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing the outcome of that. So that's just one example of an older property. Another example of a visit is when it's a much newer property where I had a family of 4 who were experiencing high fuel bills, and we're looking to save energy, but we're also very keen on installing renewables, but didn't know the best way to go about it. So their house was only 10 years old, and it was a timber-framed bungalow in a rural area, so it was off the mains gas network. The heating was storage heaters, which they weren't very keen on keeping. I did the energy audit looking at all aspects, and we sat down and discussed all the options. So the house was well insulated and had a large unshaded south-facing roof. And we came to the conclusion that the best option was to go for a ground source heat pump and solar PV panels on the roof. The father was a little bit concerned about putting in a wet system into the house, and we discussed the possibility of underfloor heating for the hall, living room, kitchen and bathrooms, but oversized radiators in the bedrooms, as the beds took up much of the ground floor space. So they've now installed the PV and ground source heat pump and found their bills are greatly reduced, and it was also made more affordable to install by making use of the financial incentives available. So as well as reducing bills, they're now benefiting from the renewable heat incentive and feed-in tariff. Okay.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Boden. So just to everyone out there, if you've got any questions for Boden or for the rest of us, then in your control panel there's a question section. You can just type something out there. But Boden, I was just interested in asking, with this this property, the modern one, you said they went for a ground source heat pump. I mean, what were some of the considerations that you went through with them about the other types of renewable heating systems, and how come that householder went for the ground source heat pump as opposed to an air source or like a biomass wood fueled heating system?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they didn't really want the hassle of having to feed a biomass system. So they really wanted something that was fully controllable, and it was a constant, something they didn't really have to think about, and it would just do its job. So in terms of the ground source heat pump, they had quite a large area of land, allowing them to put in a loop system into the ground, and they were also persuaded a bit more by the renewable heat incentive for the greater tariff that they would receive, and for the ground source heat pump rather than the biomass. However, yeah, they really liked the fact about the ground source heat pump. Also, with the ground source heat pump, making use of the ground also made the system that bit more efficient rather than using the air source, because they were quite in a rural areas, and the temperature dips can go down quite a lot. So they were more persuaded to go for the ground source rather than the biomass.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you also mentioned about sort of solar options for them. I mean, what was the shading situation like around their home?
I mean, it was fairly open, so there wasn't any sort of impact on the roof in terms of shading. With it being south-facing and a good 35-degree angle as well, it was certainly with the amount of roof space that they had, they could get a good, decent-sized 4-kilowatt system onto the roof. So that, in turn, made it a bivalent system in that it would help with the running of the ground source heat pump at the same time, helping to reduce the bill. So it was basically a win-win situation for them.
Okay, all right, brilliant, Boden. We've had a question come in from John, who says that we mentioned the 0% interest loans for improvement. So he's asking, if you wanted to install biomass and also solar panels, what value can be borrowed for each, and what would the term be, so the repayment term in years for each? So, so with regards the biomass system, you can borrow up to £10,000, and at that value, then you can set a repayment period. You can actually choose your own repayment period up to a maximum of 12 years. With regards to solar panels, it depends on the type of panel. So if it's a solar PV panel that generates electricity, then you can borrow up to £2,500. If it's a solar water heating system, you can borrow up to £5,000. And your repayment periods are going to depend on each. So below a certain value, up to £4,999, then your repayment period's up to 8 years, and it's up to 10 years if you're borrowing less than between £5,000 and £10,000. So it does depend on the technology and the amount you borrow as to what the repayment term is. You can choose a shorter repayment term if you want, and there's no fees or any restrictions on making additional repayments or paying the loan off earlier than you were originally wanted to. That's absolutely fine and totally up to you. What's quite good in a way is that the renewable heat incentive, which pays you back for the renewable heat you generate, or the feed-in tariff scheme, which pays you back for the renewable electricity you generate, those payments you get via the UK government can actually go towards, or in some cases can fully cover, the cost of the loan you've taken out, and therefore help you sort of afford that additional cost of a renewable heating system. So hopefully that's answered your question, John. We've also got a question in from Gary, asking if there's an online tool to allow users to measure their roof size in order to maximize the number of solar PV panels that can get installed. Bowden, are you aware of any online tools to help you measure your roof size, or how do you go about explaining that to some of the householders you deal with?
So in terms of roof size and roof space, basically we're generally looking at about 5 meters squared, which gives you about the 25 meters squared area for a 4 kilowatt system, which would give you around about the 16 panels. Now, the easiest way to kind of measure that out is if you've got a measuring tape, is to just measure out 5 meters one way, and then stick a little pole in the ground, and then 5 meters the other way, and you can visualize that size of space. Now, that can be obviously put into any sort of arrangement in the roof, so it doesn't necessarily need to be rectangular or completely square. It can be more rectangular, and that will give you an idea of how much space you'll have in comparison to the amount of roof space you have.
Okay, thank you, Bowden. That's very useful. We've got a question in from Graham, basically asking if any of these sort of incentives are available to people living in England. So we've obviously focused on Scotland, but with regards incentives in England, then the feed-in tariff scheme and the renewable heat incentive scheme are UK government support schemes, and they're available in England as well. So these pay you back after you've installed. The interest-free loan, the Home Energy Scotland loan, is a Scottish government scheme that's only available in Scotland, so not available elsewhere. And the other support that we've been through, so for example, the specialist advice, Scottish government funded, again, only available in Scotland, and some of the online tools are restricted to Scottish use. And I think that probably demonstrates how much support the Scottish government's putting into renewables and trying to help householders achieve as much as they can from their home. So if you do live in Scotland, then I'd recommend you sort of look into that support further and take advantage of it whilst it's in place. I guess we're quite fortunate in the level of support that we've got. It's also worth pointing out that if you are in England, there's there's something that isn't Home Energy Scotland, but it's called the Energy Saving Advice Service that's funded by BEIS. So that's similar to what Home Energy Scotland does. It's called the Energy Saving Advice Service. And you can contact them if you've got questions about energy efficiency in your home and also renewables. So the UK government does provide that over the phone type support as well. And obviously the information on the Energy Saving Trust website is available to everybody there. We've probably got time for one last question. So a question from John about PV being classed as renewable. So yes, it is classed as a renewable system. The electricity it generates is purely from a renewable source, from daylight, sunlight and daylight. So yeah, that's definitely classed as a renewable type of system. Boden, I was just going to give one last question to you, and this was to do with sort of installers and the standards they need to meet. So what are some typical questions you get from householders about sort of the standards and the protections in place for renewables installers?
Mm-hmm. So if somebody's looking to install, what we always advise is that they go for an MCS recommended installer and product. So you know, if somebody's looking to ensure that the installer qualifies, then you can go on to the Microgeneration Certification Scheme website and look up that installer, and it will show their actual MCS number. Now, if they're not on that list, then there's a likelihood that they're not MCS accredited. So it's always best to check on the MCS website. And for extra consumer protection, there's also the Renewable Energy Consumer Code, the RECC website as well, which offers consumers extra protection when purchasing a renewable system for their house.
Okay, thank you, Boden. We had a response back from John, who was asking about PV as renewable and how come the funding available for a PV system, I imagine from the loan, which is limited to £2,500 maximum, why it's not higher. And the reason for that is because there's a limited amount of funding that the Scottish Government can put into the loan scheme, and their focus is on renewable heating. Hence the reason why you can get up to £10,000. Generally, a renewable heating system was going to cost more, and also the amount you can save on your fuel bills, and also the carbon savings from your fuel bills are going to be, the carbon savings from the system are going to be higher. So renewable heating systems actually make a bigger difference to climate change targets, but also to people's carbon emissions, personal carbon emissions, and their fuel bill savings. That's the reason why you can get a higher amount of money for that. I think also a comment coming through from Steve about MCS installers, and I think it's probably worth pointing out here that our renewable specialists who come out to your home will be able to give you an indication of systems that are suitable, typical savings, and questions to ask installers. When you start getting more serious about installing a system, then obviously you're going to be getting an installer around, and they're the ones that, through the MCS standards, will need to appropriately design and size your system, explain a lot more of the technical whys and wherefores of exactly what you need to put in where, for example, sizing of the system, where pipework may need to go, all of those considerations an installer is going to go into in a lot more depth. That's obviously they're the ones that are going to be there to do that. Okay, well, we've sort of reached the limit of our time for today. Hopefully you found that useful, and obviously there's lots more information that is out there, and hopefully you can contact us at Home Energy Scotland if you want to try and find out more. well, that's the questions and answers slide, which I should have pressed earlier, but I think we've run out of time for those, unfortunately. So again, there's the link to Home Energy Scotland and through to our website. Finally, I'd just like to say a big thank you to Aurelie, Joe and Bodan again, and to everybody who took the time today to join the webinar. As I mentioned, we'll be sending a recording of it out, and it will also appear on our YouTube channel. If you want to go on there, there's also some other webinars that we've recorded over the past 6 or so months. So hopefully you'll find those useful as well. So thank you once again, and goodbye.